So Steve, when clients come to see you, what is the first thing that you focus on with them? And part B of my question is there a difference in the advice that you give someone who is maybe the higher earning spouse as opposed to either the non-working or the lower earning spouse?
Thank you, Millie. We have a lot of overlap with what JoAnne has just described. People come in to us and they don't know what their rights are. They don't know how the process works. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of anxiety. And in a number of instances, somebody needs to tell their story for the first time to someone who's going to listen. That's the emotional part that we've just heard about. And what we're listening for is, what are the issues in our case? Are there minor children? Is there someone with special needs? Is there a parent who has become a dependent? Is there a business? Is there a retirement? So we're identifying what are the legal issues going to be. In terms of your Part B, if you could refine that a little bit more for me.
Well, do you, for instance, in preparing for divorce, people, I would think, naturally start to look at their assets and say, I want to make sure I get this asset. I want to make sure I get the money out of the checking account, the savings account, the investments. And do you advise people to start making moves with their finances before divorce, or is that something that shouldn't be done until we're in the middle of the process?
Okay. Before the process, if there's no case filed, there are no ground rules. It is you're in a marriage, and people who have joint accounts, for example, have access to these accounts. The things that I look for is making sure that somebody's going to have access to funds to live their life during the course of the marriage. If there's a situation where everything is in one spouse's name, that person can bring a whole lot of financial pressure on the other person by cutting them off. So as we were actually talking before we went on the air, one of the first things I'll do is to say, do you have access to liquid funds? Next, we take a look at what are the current bills and financial obligations, and we make sure that that's getting met. And we determine very early in the process, do we need to go to court right away to get a temporary order to ensure what the responsibilities will be for who's paying what. In terms of the moneyed spouse, my background is that before practicing family law, I took a diversion from what would have otherwise been the middle of my legal career. I was admitted to practice 24 years ago. But for 6 years, I was a financial advisor with Payne Weber, which was bought by UBS during that time. So I'm familiar enough with the some of the details. I can't substitute for Mike, and that's why I've brought Mike in on my cases. But to take a look at what somebody has and listen to what's important to them. If I've got a business owner, ownership in the business and not having that divided is a natural, but we have to make a determination as to what is marital property, what might be some separate property. If I've got perhaps a second generation in a family business, and determine what is allowed by the court to be divided and maybe something that might be protected. We also, just to wrap it up, we see, is there a prenup in place that might have already established some ground rules?
Mm-hmm. What about you, Mike? Do you advise clients to move money ahead of, when they're just starting to think about divorce, or do you advise them that that really is something that shouldn't be done?
Right, that's a great question. And typically I get involved very early on in the case, but they usually already have an attorney at that point. And in most cases I've already filed, but Steve was right on target when he talked about liquidity. We all have cases where our clients have lived the millionaire lifestyle, but they've been cut off by funds because they didn't properly prepare, and now they're starved out, and they're looking to get access to funds, and that's where Steve has to go back and petition for funds. So we do talk to them about liquidity and the importance of it, and to start planning for post-divorce life, because their life is going to be very different. Everybody goes backwards financially in divorce, and that's a hard concept for people to grasp and really digest. And I think working with JoAnne and the clients that she sent to our way, they come in a lot more educated about the process and know what to expect, so we're able to get down to brass tacks a lot faster, as opposed to helping them process what's really happening.